Mary and Her Wind Chime, an aging husband with 5 joint replacements. Mary was a small business owner in her early 60s with 2 grown children and an aging carpenter for a husband. She had a congenital scoliosis in her mid-back and suffered from a variety of persistent aches and pains in her neck, shoulders, and back as a result. She was a lovely lady that lived an active lifestyle and was proactive with her health out of necessity because her body seemed to be relatively high maintenance. Mary came to see me approximately once per month for tune-ups, but occasionally needed a bit more attention if she had a flare-up of her dizziness or low back pain. She was a stoic lady with a positive attitude and a husband that gave her some perspective on her pain. Genetically, Mary was relatively stiff-jointed and developed a lateral curvature in her mid-back as a child that created a handful of asymmetries in her body over the following 60 years. Conversely, her husband was relatively loose-jointed or hypermobile, with a propensity towards osteoarthritis, a degenerative joint condition. We all sit on a spectrum of how relatively stretchy the soft tissues of our bodies are based on how much elastin we have. Mary lived on one side of the spectrum while her husband swung his hammer on the other end, and both came with their own challenges. By soft tissues, I largely mean everything in your body that isn't bone. Skin, muscles, tendons, ligaments, and blood vessels are all soft tissues and vary in their extensibility from one person to the next based on genetic factors. Mary's skeleton was well supported by her soft tissues, to the point she was relatively locked into a braced holding pattern in the muscles of her rib cage and shoulder girdles. She wasn't very flexible, but was quite functional as long as she tended to her stiff areas. Her husband, on the other hand, felt like a Raggedy Ann doll with arthritic joints. His 63-year-old skin hung off him like a leather bag, and his rib cage felt like a bunch of piano keys. He was a hypermobile carpenter that had been dragging his Gumby-like body on and off of roofs for the past 20 years with joints that slid around way too much. Being overly flexible may seem like a good thing, but it is a much more challenging reality to control and stack up all your joints when they are very loosely held together. Hypermobile people, like Mary's husband, tend to develop a variety of bracing strategies and feel a lot stiffer than their hypomobile counterparts. Hypermobile joints can develop more wear and tear degeneration because they shift and slide too much, while hypomobile joints can develop arthritis due to the relative compression of the bones. Mary's husband fell into the former group and developed osteoarthritis in most of his major joints by the time he was 60. Like Mary, he maintained a positive attitude, stayed active, and dealt with his issues as they arose. He started with a right knee replacement, followed by his right hip, left knee, right shoulder, and eventually his right thumb joint. He made friends going through the metal detector every time he traveled, and Mary claimed she was going to turn him into a wind chime when he passed away. I, like Mary's husband, am quite hypermobile, which I didn't even realize was a thing until I had already played years of contact sports, dislocated my shoulder, hurt most parts of my body, became a physiotherapist, and started poking and prodding at other people's bodies all day. I realized in my late 20s that I wasn't held together the same way as your average person. I regularly felt stiff and sore after sports, but I realized that I was quite flexible when I compared myself to most of my clients. Moving other people's joints around all day, I started to feel the difference between genetic hypermobility, bracing muscle patterns, stiffness, muscle tone, and genetic hypomobility. Just like our personalities, the current state of our bodies is a hybrid of both genetic factors and all the physical and emotional experiences we had to date. Mary's scoliosis and relative hypomobility created a series of muscle imbalances and areas of compression in her spine, hips, and shoulder girdles. She tried all manners of therapeutic interventions before seeing me, but found that my use of IMS dry needling gave her the longest lasting relief and enabled her to stretch and move more efficiently on her own. The dry needling treatment can seem like magic to a person that has been locked into a pattern of bracing muscle tone for a long time. Mary had a love-hate relationship with IMS because she found the process of needling her tense muscles quite uncomfortable, but the results always proved to be worth it. Her hypermobile, wind chime husband, on the other hand, found the experience of IMS to be almost ticklish, but also profoundly effective. Nothing has taught me more about the human body and human nature than the act of performing IMS dry needling on people in various levels of pain and discomfort. It allows the therapist to tap into the client's nervous system in a targeted manner with both therapeutic and diagnostic intentions. It can stimulate intense muscle contractions and releases, unveil interesting pain referral patterns, and uncover strong emotional holding patterns. The process can be simple, easy, and comfortable for some, or intense, painful, and emotional for others. I will explain how it works and how I integrated it into other treatments to address the needs of individuals, each with their own combinations of spectrums: hypermobility, mental awareness, physical control, injury, and healing.